It wasn't just a phone call. It was the precise moment the floor dropped out from under my entire world. One breath, then another, and suddenly the air was thin, cold, impossible to truly draw in. My father, the man who had been my bedrock, my only constant since I was a boy, was gone. Heart failure, they said, a whisper on the other end of the line, as if that clinical phrase could possibly encompass the void that had just opened up inside me. No warning, no last goodbye, just gone. The hospital's voice still echoed in the silent, suffocating space of my apartment as I walked into Cheryl's office. The harsh, fluorescent lights of the corporate world, a stark contrast to the dim reality of my grief. Every step felt heavy, like dragging chains. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was about to ask for something she wouldn't willingly give, something that would inconvenience the meticulously ordered, utterly heartless universe she inhabited. And in that moment, the raw edges of my shock began to sharpen into a simmering, dangerous anger. What happened next wasn't just a confrontation. It was the spark that would ignite an inferno, not in the office, but within me, leading to a path no one, especially not Cheryl, could have ever predicted. If you've ever felt truly undervalued, truly disposable, then brace yourself, because this is the story of what happens when you decide you've had enough and take back everything they didn't realize they needed. The unfeeling heart of the machine. Cheryl sat behind her absurdly oversized desk, a monument to corporate power and personal detachment, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a rhythm that suggested it owed her money, or perhaps its very existence. The click-clack was the only sound in the sterile room, a relentless soundtrack to my internal turmoil. "Hey," I managed, my voice rough, clearing a throat suddenly tight with unshed tears and a burgeoning sense of indignation. "I need a few days off." Her fingers didn't falter. Her gaze remained fixed on the glowing monitor, as if acknowledging my presence, let alone my words, would be a profound concession. "My dad passed this morning. The funeral's in Indiana, so I'd need 4 days." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken grief and the simple, undeniable truth of my situation. "You can have 2, she stated flatly, the words delivered without a pause in her relentless typing, devoid of even the faintest tremor of human emotion. I blinked, processing her response, feeling a slow, cold disbelief creep up my spine. 2 days? It's a 9-hour drive each way, I pointed out, my voice barely above a whisper, trying to appeal to some logic, some shred of understanding. Finally, her eyes, like chips of ice, slid from the screen to me. There wasn't a hint of sympathy, no flicker of concern, only a cool, assessing glance that seemed to catalog my disheveled state as an inefficiency. "You can attend virtually." The suggestion landed like a physical blow. I stared at her, not entirely sure I'd heard her right. Virtually? My father's funeral? The absurdity, the sheer callousness of it was almost breathtaking. "This is my dad," I heard myself say, the words laced with a pain I hadn't yet fully acknowledged. "He raised me by himself since I was 10. I'm not watching it on Zoom." The thought was grotesque, a digital mockery of a sacred farewell. Cheryl leaned back in her chair, a performative sigh escaping her lips, as if I was the one inconveniencing her with my inconveniently deceased parent and my inconveniently human emotions. "Then you'll have to choose," she declared, her tone dismissive. "We're in the middle of the Norland migration. Everyone's expected to be here." That hit harder than I thought it would. It wasn't just a statement. It was a summation of 3 years of my life, distilled into a single, brutal sentence. 3 years I'd poured into this place, building every single process they ran on from the ground up. 3 years of late nights, of coming in sick when others stayed home, of silently covering for countless screw-ups that weren't mine. I'd given them everything, my expertise, my time, my unwavering dedication. And now, my father was dead, and I was being told to choose between his memory and their corporate project. "Seriously?" I managed, my voice tightening, a tremor of pure, unadulterated rage starting to vibrate through me. "I've never taken a sick day, never asked for anything." She simply shrugged, a dismissive gesture that encapsulated her entire worldview. "This is business. We all make sacrifices." I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, not from sadness now, but from a cold, controlled fury that was starting to build. Sacrifices? What did she know about sacrifice? about being a 10-year-old boy burying his mother, then watching his father work himself to the bone to keep a roof over their heads. "Fine," I said, the word a mere whisper, laced with a promise I hadn't yet fully articulated, even to myself. 2 days. She turned back to her monitor, dismissing me entirely as if I were already gone, a problem neatly solved and filed away. The cracking point. I walked out of her office without another word. My head was buzzing, a frantic symphony of grief and betrayal. My chest felt tight, not just from sorrow, but from a suffocating pressure, like a vice clamping down on my very breath. I made it halfway down the hallway, past the endless rows of identical gray cubicles, each one a testament to the monotony and slow erosion of spirit I had endured for over 1,000 days. The air in this place felt stagnant, thick with unvoiced frustrations and the stale scent of ambition gone sour. And then something in me cracked. It wasn't loud, not dramatic, no Hollywood crescendo of shattering glass. It was quiet, subtle, yet utterly, undeniably final. It was the sound of a carefully constructed dam giving way, not with a roar, but with a silent, irreversible shift. I hadn't meant to look back, but I did. I stopped, turned slowly, and stared down that long, sterile hallway. It was like seeing it for the very first time, stripped of the comforting illusions I had built around it. The fake smiles plastered on tired faces, the half-dead eyes staring blankly at screens. Look, the faded posters touting teamwork, peeling forlornly from the walls, revealing the cheap paint beneath. It was all a facade, a carefully curated illusion of belonging and purpose. I kept walking, but not back to my desk, not to the gray cubicle that had been my cage. I walked straight out the door, the automatic whoosh, a sound of both escape and finality. I sat in my car for a while, the engine off, the silence inside a stark contrast to the frantic buzzing of the parking lot lights overhead, like mechanical insects trying to remind me that I still had a choice. But I didn't. Not really. The choice had already been made, forged in the crucible of grief and Cheryl's cold indifference. I already knew what I was going to do, with a clarity that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Inside my apartment, everything was still, hushed, waiting. I dropped my bag, the thud echoing in the quiet, and kicked off my shoes. I just stood there in the dark, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sign of life. The clock on the stove read 11:47 p.m., its red digits a stark reminder of the passage of time, of the hours since that fateful call. I didn't even sit down right away. I just walked to my bedroom, laid flat on my back on the bed, and stared at the ceiling, as if its blank expanse could somehow tell me what the hell had just happened. Dad was gone, and not one person from that office, not a single one, would be there when we put him in the ground. Hashed. A quiet reckoning. At precisely 2:30 in the morning, the anger, cold and sharp, propelled me from the bed. I opened my laptop, the familiar glow illuminating my face in the dark room. I logged in remotely, a ritual I had performed countless times over the past 3 years. During holidays, on weekends, late into nights when other people were too lazy or too incompetent to fix their own messes. But this time, it was different. This wasn't about being a loyal employee. This was about retribution. I went straight to my personal folders, bypassing all the company junk, the client data, the project files that weren't mine. I had my own stash, a meticulously organized collection of digital artifacts that represented the true engine of that company. Stuff I'd built from scratch, often on my own time, just to keep the entire machine running when no one else gave a damn. Integration manuals for systems nobody understood, client-specific troubleshooting sheets that saved their bacon countless times. API call structures I documented myself because not a single other soul knew how they truly worked. Notes from failed attempts, fixed versions, cleaned up code, snippets, config backups, most of it created during my personal hours, the rest while silently covering gaping holes no one else bothered to fill. And now I was taking it back, every single byte. As my fingers flew across the keyboard, a phantom memory flickered in my mind. Cheryl's voice, cold and dismissive, "Then you'll have to choose." A wry, humorless smile touched my lips in the dim light. Yes, I chose. I chose. I started zipping files, encrypting folders, running checksum scripts with a practiced ease born of repetition. My fingers moved on muscle memory, but my mind was miles away, transported to a different garage, a different workbench. I saw my dad, his hands calloused and strong, showing me how to use a power drill the right way, his voice deep and steady. "If you're going to build something," he'd said, his eyes crinkling at the corners, "build it like it's got to outlive you." That's what I had done at work. I had built systems to last, to function flawlessly, to outlive the petty squabbles and short-sighted decisions of management. And none of them, not a single one, had given a damn. By 6 a.m., the digital landscape of the company's shared drives was irrevocably altered. Every last version of my work, every crucial piece of documentation had been scrubbed clean, gone, wiped from the system, replaced by a single, stark text file. Documentation removed by original author. No backup available. Then, with a sense of calm purpose, I opened a new email. The subject line was concise, powerful, formal resignation, effective immediately. No long, obsequious speech. No insincere thanks for the opportunity. Just 2 short paragraphs stating my immediate departure. I attached my formal resignation letter, hit send, and then, with a profound sense of closure, shut the laptop. I picked up my bag, already packed with essentials for the journey, and walked out of the apartment. I didn't even look at my phone. It had started buzzing frantically around 6:30, probably the morning crew noticing the inexplicable void where critical data used to be. I simply turned it off. The departure. At 8:10 a.m., I stood in line at the airport, a solitary figure amidst the bustling morning crowd. My hoodie was up, backpack slung casually over one shoulder, a ticket to Indianapolis tucked securely in my pocket. The gate agent barely spared me a glance as she scanned my boarding pass. Her routine efficiency, a welcome balm against the storm brewing inside me. I didn't care about her indifference or the endless chatter of fellow travelers. For the first time in 3 long years, I felt a profound sense of liberation, a lightness in my step that hadn't been there before. I truly felt, like I wasn't pretending anymore. While boarding, a woman behind me in line was loudly complaining about her seat assignment, her voice shrill with indignation over some minor inconvenience. I wanted to turn around to fix her with a steady gaze and say, "At least your dad's still breathing." But I didn't. I just kept walking, moving towards my destiny. Middle seat, tight row, no legroom, none of it mattered. The cramped quarters of the plane were a small price to pay for the expansive freedom I now felt. I was going home. I stared out the window as the plane taxied down the runway, then lifted effortlessly into the cool morning sky. My mind wasn't on the job, or Cheryl, or Hal, or any of them. Their petty dramas and corporate crises felt infinitely distant, irrelevant. My thoughts drifted, coalescing around fragments of memory, the quiet chapel in Bloomington where we would lay him to rest, the worn coffee can my dad kept bolts in, a testament to his practical, organized mind, the comforting, familiar smell of wood stain that always clung to his garage, the way he used to whistle, a tuneless, cheerful melody, while he worked on some project, as if the world was a little less broken if you just stayed busy enough. I had no clue what was waiting for me out there in the world beyond the corporate cage, but for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't scared, just clear. Home among ghosts. We touched down just after 2 p.m., the soft thud of the wheels hitting the runway a gentle return to earth. The second the plane's landing gear made contact, I flipped my phone back on. It lit up like a damn Christmas tree, a relentless barrage of notifications. 19 missed calls, mostly from Hal and Cheryl. Voicemails started rolling in even before the lock screen fully loaded, each one a desperate plea or a veiled threat. I played the first one, Hal's voice, a little breathless. "Hey, it's Hal. We noticed some files are missing. Could you give me a call when you land?" The second was Cheryl, her clipped tone unmistakable. "We're escalating this internally. If this was accidental, please clarify immediately." The third was pure gold, Hal again, a note of frantic indignation entering his voice. "This isn't how professionals handle things." I snorted, a sharp, humorless sound, and slid the phone back into my pocket. That was rich, coming from a guy who once forgot to tell a client their contract auto-renewed for double the rate, nearly costing the company millions. Professionals, indeed. I picked up my rental car, a dusty blue Ford Focus that smelled vaguely of stale fast food and a lingering sadness. Then I drove south, towards Bloomington, towards the quiet embrace of home. The farther I got from the city, from the concrete and glass towers that housed the soulless corporation, the easier it was to breathe. Each mile was a cleansing breath, stripping away the tension that had coiled around my chest for so long. Dad's house was just how I remembered it. Low brick, a gently sloping roof, the porch light flickering almost rhythmically when the wind hit it just right. I stepped inside, and a familiar wave of scent washed over me. Sawdust, old books, and the comforting aroma of black coffee. It was as if time hadn't touched this place, as if he had just stepped outside for a moment and would be back any second. His sturdy work boots were still by the door, worn and familiar. A chipped mug sat on the kitchen counter, half full, a testament to a life interrupted. I just stood there, my hand resting on the doorframe, breathing it all in, letting the ghosts of memory comfort and ache in equal measure. That night, unable to sleep, I stayed up in the garage, sitting at the workbench, while the old heater hummed softly in the corner, a gentle, mechanical lullaby. I started digging through old drawers, each one a treasure trove of his life. Clamps, chisels, tiny screwdrivers meticulously organized. In the bottom cabinet, I found a metal tin packed with baseball cards, rubber banded into groups, just like he used to keep them. He never collected for money. He'd always said the stats told better stories than faces ever could. My phone vibrated again, pulling me from the quiet reverence of the past. I didn't even have to look to know. Emails now. The first from Cheryl, subject line, urgent documentation access required, client disruption. The second, follow-up needed, migration, incomplete. The third came from Hal, hours later, a slightly more conciliatory tone. Can we schedule a quick call tomorrow? Want to discuss your situation and your father's funeral plans. Funny how fast they learned his name when their empire was crumbling. I clicked reply. Typed, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time works. I'll send the invite. No sign-off, no emotion, just business. I set the meeting for exactly 2 p.m. Right in the heart of their Norland migration deadline. I knew precisely what that hour meant to them. I closed my laptop and looked around the garage. It was quiet, save for the soft hum of the heater and the occasional creak from the old rafters. It felt more alive, more real than any office I'd ever worked in. I leaned back in Dad's old chair, kicked my feet up on the workbench, and watched my phone buzz again. They were panicking. Good. Now they could feel what it was like to lose the one person holding everything together. The confrontation and the cost. The next morning, I brewed a pot of coffee and poured it into Dad's chipped Mr. Fix-It mug. I set my laptop on the kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten countless bowls of cereal before school, the same table that offered a view of the backyard where Dad had patiently taught me to mow in perfectly straight lines. At exactly 1:59 p.m., I clicked the meeting link. Hal's face popped up first, red-eyed, his collar crooked as if he hadn't slept a wink. Cheryl joined next, her hair pinned up tight as always, her mouth already set in a tense, grim line. Then came a third window, revealing a stern-faced woman in glasses, with "legal" written all over her rigid posture. First, Hal began, his voice slow and carefully practiced, we're very sorry about your father. The words were hollow, devoid of any genuine sentiment. I offered no response, just took a slow sip of my coffee. He waited, then glanced nervously at Cheryl, who immediately jumped in. We need access to your documentation. The migration is falling apart without it. I tilted my head slightly, feigning polite inquiry. My documentation? You built it on company time, the legal woman chimed in, her voice crisp, her eyes sharp. It's considered work product. I laughed once, a short, cold sound that held no mirth. You mean the scripts I made after hours? The guides I built because no one approved a training budget? The notes I wrote just so I wouldn't get blamed when Hal forgot a meeting? That doesn't change the fact that it's proprietary, Legal countered, unmoved. No, I said, my voice firm. It's not. It doesn't contain any client data, source code, or internal IP. It's tools. My tools, built because I was left to sink or swim, and I chose not to drown. Cheryl leaned forward, her composure starting to fray. Norland's team can't complete the migration. Reporting functions are dead. Clients are asking where their dashboards are. I took another deliberate sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. Sounds like a staffing issue. Hal rubbed his forehead, a gesture of profound weariness. Look, I understand you're grieving, but we really need a solution here. I nodded slowly. I have one. My gaze met Cheryl's, unwavering. I'm not rejoining the team. I'm not reinstating anything, but I will consult. Cheryl's eyes narrowed, a flash of pure indignation. Excuse me? 300 an hour, 20-hour minimum, paid up front. I'll walk your people through what they need, answer questions, and help you hit the finish line. That's extortion, Cheryl snapped, her voice rising. I had shrugged, outwardly calm. It's supply and demand. Hal quickly interjected, trying to regain control. We can't approve that kind of spend without going through finance. Then talk to finance, I retorted, my voice even, because the clock's ticking and Norland's not going to sit around while you fumble through backups that don't exist. Legal remained quiet, her fingers now flying across her keyboard, no doubt furiously taking notes. Also, I added, watching their faces, I won't be working around your schedule. I'm handling my father's estate this week. Calls are limited to 2 hours per day. You'll get the window I give you. Silence. Cheryl looked ready to snap, but Hal was already nodding, a defeated slump to his shoulders. Can you send over a formal agreement? He asked, the words forced. I'll send terms, I replied. Once I see the funds, we'll schedule the first call. Hal nodded again, like this entire exchange was physically paining him. We'll expedite it. Legal spoke for the first time since her furious typing. Please don't delete any additional company-related material. There's nothing left to delete, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. You're already standing in the crater. I ended the call. There was no guilt, no second-guessing, just a profound, pervasive calm. The kind of calm you get when you finally stop explaining yourself to people who never cared enough to listen in the first place. A proper farewell. Thursday morning came with a quiet wait. I pulled on a wrinkled black button-up, still faintly smelling of Dad's garage, and didn't bother ironing it. He wouldn't have. The chapel, bathed in the soft, diffused light of its familiar stained glass, was the same one where we had buried Mom so many years ago. The same creaky pews, the same slightly damp-feeling carpet, regardless of the weather. Now it was Dad's turn. I stood near the front, my hands shoved deep into my pockets as people slowly filtered in. Old neighbors from down the street, his buddies from the community college where he'd worked as a handyman, a couple of weathered guys from the VFW. They weren't dressed fancy, not a suit in sight, but every single one of them showed up. Your dad helped me fix my water heater during a snowstorm, one man said, clapping my shoulder, his eyes filled with genuine sorrow. Wouldn't let me pay him, another added, a small, sad smile playing on his lips. Even his barber came, clutching a small box of sugar cookies. He hated getting haircuts, she laughed softly, but he always brought me pie in July. I didn't speak much, just nodded, hugged a few folks, letting their stories wash over me, each one a testament to the quiet, unassuming goodness of my father. Then I saw Mr. Banner, my high school shop teacher, slowly making his way down the aisle. Same thick glasses, same stiff, deliberate walk. He pulled me into a hug that felt like I was still 17. Your dad never stopped bragging about you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Every time I saw him, it was my kid built that whole damn system by himself. You were his whole world, son. My throat clenched, a knot of grief and pride tightening there. I just nodded, unable to get a single word out. The service was simple, just as he would have wanted. A few quiet prayers, a hymn Dad particularly liked, a short, heartfelt eulogy from a colleague at the college about how Dad always fixed the vending machines when facilities wouldn't. It wasn't flowery, it wasn't long, but it was real. Afterward, as I stepped outside into the crisp, cool air, I pulled out my phone. 27 missed calls. I slid it back into my pocket without even bothering to read the names. Their urgency meant nothing here. I walked around back to the shed, a place that held so many memories. On the workbench, amidst the tools and sawdust, sat a small wooden pendant. It was still rough on the edges, half sanded, the loophole not yet drilled. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand, tracing the smooth grain. He'd been making it for me. I remembered him showing me the design a month ago, a quiet gesture of love. He said it was walnut, from a tree he'd cut down in Aunt June's yard. I grabbed some sandpaper and got to work. Not fast, not overly careful, just steady. In that moment, I didn't feel proud or smug or justified. I just felt clear. The reckoning. Friday morning, I was back at Dad's kitchen table, the familiar comfort of the home wrapping around me. Coffee in one hand, laptop open, earbuds in. The Norland call started at 9 sharp. Their entire technical team was there, a huddle of anxious faces, along with Hal, Cheryl, and some guy I didn't recognize who looked like he hadn't seen sleep in 3 days. Hal cleared his throat, his voice strained. We had to delay the presentation. Norland wasn't happy. I took a slow sip of my coffee. That sounds like a problem. Cheryl jumped in, her composure cracking. We need to get this fixed now. They're threatening to pull out. I nodded calmly. Then let's get started. I shared my screen, revealing the meticulously organized disaster. Line by line, error by error, I walked them through the wreckage. Broken API links, failed queries, dead-end report scripts they'd tried to patch with haphazard copy-paste fixes. One critical process had been misconfigured for 3 months, a flaw I'd flagged in January, which no one had bothered to touch. Hal tried to move things along, clearly uncomfortable with the detailed autopsy of their failures. Can we skip the background and just... No, I cut in, my voice unwavering. You're paying for clarity. You'll get clarity, not shortcuts. He shut up. I kept going, answering their questions one by one, methodically dismantling their excuses. I didn't sugarcoat it, didn't soften the tone. This part broke because someone deleted the fallback logic. This report fails because the database connection times out every 3rd run. I told you that in December. This is what happens when you rely on duct tape and interns. By the halfway point, no one argued. They just nodded, typing furiously, looking like people trying to rebuild a plane midair. An hour and 47 minutes later, I closed the session. Hal leaned in, his face etched with exhaustion. We appreciate your help. That was necessary. We'll need you back on Monday to finalize the rest, Cheryl added, already attempting to dictate terms. I shook my head. Not in our contract. But we still have questions, she protested, her voice bordering on desperate. Norland? Then put them in writing, I interjected, cutting her off. Wait, Hal said, a sudden realization dawning on him. Are you saying you're not available Monday? I'll be at my dad's lawyer's office Monday morning. Priorities. They both looked stunned, as if they'd genuinely forgotten this entire costly charade was happening because they couldn't spare me 4 damn days in the first place. Cheryl tried one last time to salvage it. Well, just let us know when you're available. I clicked leave meeting. That was the beauty of being prepaid. I didn't owe them a single second more. The desperate play Tuesday afternoon, I logged into what was supposed to be the final consultation call. There were no greetings, no small talk, just their faces staring back at me from the screen, looking like they had just walked out of a car crash. Hal looked truly wrecked, hair uncombed, tie loosened, his voice low and defeated. The demo went badly. Norland's pissed. Cheryl didn't even try to hide the extent of the disaster. They're giving us 2 more weeks to fix it. After that, they're walking. I nodded once. Understood. We went through the last batch of questions, the remaining script adjustments, the data sync issues, a rogue report that somehow kept pulling March figures for every single month. I kept my tone level, calm, clear, professional. They asked, I answered. Nothing more, nothing less. At the very end, Hal glanced off screen, then back at me, his shoulders slumped. Before we wrap, there's one more thing. Here it came. He cleared his throat. We've been talking internally, and we'd like to make you an offer. A real one. Cheryl jumped in before I could even respond, her voice tinged with an urgency she hadn't possessed in my 3 years there. Director level, remote. You'd oversee your own team. We'd hire 3 under you to start. You'd report directly to Hal. And, she hesitated, forcing the words out, a 50% raise. Also, Hal quickly added, eager to sweeten the deal, you'd be on the executive planning calls going forward, full seat at the table. The line went quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat, a slow, steady thrum against my ribs. Not because I was nervous, but because I was profoundly bone-deep pissed off that it took this long. I looked at them both, their faces a tableau of desperation. This wasn't gratitude. This was pure, unadulterated fear. I leaned back in Dad's old chair, a slight, knowing smile on my face. You're not offering that because I earned it. You're offering it because you're scared. Hal tried to protest, a weak, sputtering sound. That's not... I held up a hand, cutting him off. Don't. You had 3 years. I was useful to you the entire time, but you never once treated me like I was valued until things blew up in your faces." Cheryl looked down, silent, her rigid posture finally crumbling. "I buried my father last week," I continued, my voice low but firm. "And your first reaction was to demand access to my work, not ask if I was okay. Now you want to promote me?" Hal exhaled slowly, a defeated sigh. "We're trying to do right by you now." I gave a half-smile devoid of warmth. "Too late." "Is there any version of this offer you'd consider?" he asked, a desperate plea in his eyes. "No," I said simply, "because it's not about the title or the money. It's about the fact that I had to take everything away from you just to get noticed." Cheryl whispered, her voice barely audible. "We didn't realize." "You didn't care to realize," I cut in, my voice sharp and final. "And that's the difference." Another long silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. I let it hang, letting them sit in the uncomfortable space of their own making. Then, with a quiet click, I left the meeting, clean, final. Dad used to say people only show their true cards when they feel the pressure. Turns out, he was right. Aftermath and new horizons. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from Cameron in finance, the subject line terse, update on Norland. I clicked it open without much thought, already knowing what it would say. Norland pulled out. 3 other clients are with reevaluating. Just thought you'd want to know. No hello, no signature, just that. I stared at the screen for a second, feeling no smug satisfaction, no trace of pity, just a profound sense of rightness. They had gambled on pretending I was replaceable, and now the bill had come due. A month after that, I joined a smaller firm, a tight-knit team of 10 people total, nestled in Columbus. No layers of bureaucracy, no endless corporate jargon. On my second day, during a casual onboarding call, the CEO looked me straight in the eye and asked, "How are you holding up after losing your dad?" Not "what can you do for us?" Not "how fast can you start?" Just that. I took my time settling in, easing into the new role. They told me with genuine warmth, family first, work comes second, or it'll ruin both. It felt like breathing fresh air after years of sucking dust. 6 months passed. I was settled in, finally sleeping full nights again. Dad's garage was cleaned, his shop reorganized, tools gleaming on the pegboard. That's when I saw it. A message on LinkedIn from Hal. "I know I handled things wrong. I'm trying to change. You were right about all of it. Your dad sounded like a remarkable man." I stared at the message for a while, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was deciding if it was even worth the effort. Finally, I typed back, a simple, honest truth. "He was remarkable. Thanks for recognizing it." That was it. No grudges, no second round, just closure. That night, I set the wooden pendant on my desk, walnut smooth now, polished to a soft sheen. I'd finished sanding it 2 months ago, just like he would have done. Not perfect, perhaps, but solid, like him. Sometimes the strongest move isn't burning the place down, it's walking away with everything they didn't realize they needed, and letting them sit in the silence you leave behind.